Hello again, everyone. So this week we are talking about Plato's metaphysics and epistemology, and particularly continuing our story of Socrates' project and filling in the gaps that we think were left over. So Plato thinks the theory of forms can solve some of those problems we discussed for Socrates' project, particularly how do we know these objective forms or objective truth exists, and how do we know this process of dialectic actually does lead us to some objective knowledge? Okay, so to first get sort of a handle on the forms, we need to discuss the allegory of the cave and the divided line. You already watched a video on the allegory of the cave, so I'm not going to harp on that for too long, but I still want to say a few things, give a sort of rough summary. So we have this individual who has spent their entire life in the cave, watching the shadows on the wall, become sort of an expert at identifying the shadows on the wall. And he's come to know the world of mere appearances very well, right? This isn't the world that actually exists. It's just merely the way things appear. And so when he's freed and turns around and sees the fire and the objects and sees that that's casting the shadows on the wall, this person, it's painful for them, right? Their worldview or their view of reality has been sort of smashed. It's been ripped wide open, and they realize that the shadows are not the real objects. The objects behind them are the real objects, and the shadows are mere mere appearances of those objects. Right? And so there's a sort of cognitive dissonance there. It clashes with how he thinks the world looks. And so he has to revise his beliefs. Now he has stepped forward toward knowledge, toward what the ultimate reality is really made up of. So here at this point, he's in the world of appearances. Here at this point, he's in the world of objects or beliefs. Right? He has beliefs about each of the particular objects he has seen, but he doesn't have any like deep reasoning or deep understanding of any of these objects. And so then he makes it out into the world, and he starts to see all of these objects, but he also starts to see how all of nature is working together, how all of nature sort of acts as a system. And so once again, his worldview is smashed, right? It's not just this few objects in a fire in a cave. There's so much more to the world and so much more to how the world operates. So he's getting closer to the truth, getting closer to objective truth or objective reality. But he's not quite there yet, because at this point, he has abstracted himself away from the particular objects, right? So he sees this tree, he has particular beliefs about this tree, but now he realizes, well, it's not just this one tree I'm seeing, but there's all of these trees which fit this same concept. And so now he can start to sort of abstract away from the particular things he sees in the world and form general ideas about all of these objects, but also form ideas about how all of the objects in nature relate to one another. So he's no longer really working in the visual world or the material world. He's working in the intellectual or intelligible world. And he's forming principles and concepts. And so he's coming to a deeper understanding there. And then finally, Plato says, they come to see the sun and understand its role in everything. And so at this point, the original cave dweller has witnessed objective truth, or what Plato will call the forms. And so you see the objective truth, and you also get to see the relations between everything in the universe, right? You see how the sun impacts the planets, impacts the earth you're on, and the growth and life, and then how all of that growth and life interacts with one another, right? You see the relations between all things. And so now we're not just sort of thinking about principles, we have true knowledge about the world. So that's what this is supposed to be sort of showing us. It's supposed to be showing us the process by which we move through these different layers of thought or different layers of reality to find the objective truth. Okay, so there's more to it than that, but like I said, I don't want to harp on it for too long. So let's move on. So heavily related to the allegory of the cave is Plato's analogy of the divided line, right? And so I've sort of been using these words already in describing the cave, but roughly there are these sort of 4 different levels of reality, 4 different ways of thinking about the world, 4 different things you experience when you're thinking that way about the world. And so we start off here in the world of mere appearances. Right? And this is the lowest level of reality and lowest sort of mental state you can have. So this relates to the shadows in the cave, right? When he uses imagining, it's not like the robust sense we think now where you can like create a fictional story. He means literally you're just sort of holding images of objects. So there are the objects, but then there are images of the objects. And so these images aren't even as real as the objects themselves. They're a level removed from reality. So images are the lowest form of reality. And then you move on to the second step in the cave where you see the objects causing the shadows. Now you're in the world of visible things, but you're still in the world of appearances, right? You're still in the world of how things look in the material world. And you form beliefs about them, but you form beliefs only about the particular things. And then you finally move into the intelligible world. And here you're doing real thinking now, a mental state that is about realizing the underlying principles of things, right? So the same as we would get when we're doing math. When we're finding mathematical principles, right, you're not thinking about that particular triangle anymore. You're thinking about all triangles and the rules that govern them, and that's moving you into the intelligible world. And then finally, you reach the highest level of reality or mental state, and that's where you have knowledge, and that's where you have the forms. You don't know what the forms are yet, but we'll get there soon. But just so you know, it's more than understanding mathematical principles, right? It's understanding how everything hangs together. Okay. So just so you can cement this in, right? Images and appearances, they're sort of the lowest form of reality. It's simply the way things appear to you. It's not as it actually is, right? So this sort of pencil trick here is a classic example. If you stick a pencil in water, it looks bent from the outside, but, excuse me, it looks bent, but you know, in fact, the pencil is not bent. It wasn't bent before you put it in. You can pull it out. It's still not bent, right? So as you're looking at the pencil in the water, you're seeing it only as it appears to you, not as it actually is. So that's why this is sort of the lowest level of mental state or lowest level of reality. And so some other examples of this, besides the pencil illusion, there's the shadows in the cave, but also Plato thinks pieces of art are sort of the lowest level of reality or mental state, at least pieces of art that are meant to represent an object or person. Because the person is the object as it actually is, right? And a painting or a piece of art about that person is one step removed, right? It's a mere image of the person. It's how they appear to you or how they appear to the artist, but it's not actually themselves. It's not the object as it is. And then you move into the world of the objects or visible things, right? And so this relates to the mental state of believing. But not believing generally, like it's not every single belief you have in your head, right? Because you have beliefs about mathematical principles. That's not what Plato's talking about here. He's not talking about these bits of knowledge you have that are general principles about how the world operates or how things are, so on and so forth. Here he literally means you just have a particular belief about that particular object, right? It's a limited state. We only know about the objects in the particular instances in which we've seen them. Right? So your beliefs about trees, that's only a belief about the particular trees you've seen so far. It's not a general belief about the concept of trees or how all trees would act. Right? So just because you've seen 5 pine trees, right, you don't know enough yet to sort of generalize about how pine trees are and operate. So this is what he means here by belief. It's just beliefs about the particular things you've seen. Obviously, knowledge is more than that. We want to be able to say something about all the trees, right? Or at least all pine trees, or what justice is in general, or what piety is in general, not what Euthyphro was saying, right? Euthyphro, when he gave his first definition about prosecuting the wrong, What he was doing was giving a belief. He was giving some information about a particular instance of piety, not piety in general. Here's what Socrates was on the search for, right? This is why he hated Euthyphro's first definition. He wanted to move beyond the belief about particular objects or instances of piety and wanted to know the essence of it, wanted to know the sort of intellectual underpinning of it. And so here, we've already sort of discussed this, but when we make that first jump from the visible world and the world of belief into the intelligible world, what we're doing is we're moving into mental states where we're thinking about the objects generally instead of just forming beliefs about the particular things we've seen. So we're moving away from our sense experiences, we're moving away from our senses and into our intellect. Right now, we're not thinking about the triangles we've seen in the world. We're hypothesizing or theorizing about triangles in general. What are the laws and principles that govern them? What are the geometric principles that govern all shapes in reality? And so this relates to what scientists and mathematicians are doing all the time, right? Scientists aren't thinking about one particular event. They don't spend all of their time thinking about the one piece of evidence they have, right? They're thinking about the laws or principles, the theories that underlie everything. So they're in the intelligible world. They're thinking now. They're not just having beliefs. And then finally, you move on to seeing the sun, right? You have perfect knowledge. And like I said, you don't know the forms yet, but roughly when you have knowledge of the forms, you have knowledge of how all things relate to one another. Right? You don't just know how a particular just act plays out, but you know how justice and goodness and piety all relate to one another. You know all of the ways in which they relate to one another, and you know each of them perfectly. Right, so now you're dealing with these perfect abstracted objects, and you have perfect knowledge of them. Okay, so that's the cave and the divided line, and that's roughly how Plato thinks the different levels of reality and different levels of our mental states go. And obviously, we want to move out of the cave or move out of the world of appearances and push ourselves to move toward this state of knowledge or experience of the forms, right? We want to be in the intelligible world, not just in the visible or sensible world, because only in the intelligible world can we live a better life by getting the knowledge we desire, by knowing the truths about the world around us. Okay, so here's where you get the theory of forms. And we'll go through this in more detail in the next video. Thank you, everyone.